What's up, Pitt fans? Welcome back to another Pitt mailbag here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. He is Chris Carter. I'm Noah Hiles. And Chris, it's the off season. We've got a lot to talk about. I think we should just get right to it.
Absolutely. Lots to talk about here.
All right, so we go into our first question. It is from Nate, who wants to know, and this is something that's been asked by a couple of people over the last few weeks. You know, we finally decided to filter it in. Has an extension with Heather Lyke been discussed? Chances it happens and she stays. So here's what I know on this. I know just from covering college athletics and just speaking with people in numerous athletic departments at the collegiate level, there are times when an athletic director gets an extension or gets a brand new contract for that matter, and it's not necessarily announced immediately. And I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case here with Pitt, because I just know from everyone that I've spoken with within Pitt athletics, they're obviously very pleased with the job that Heather Lyke has done. And I don't think the university would be crazy enough to let her deal come down to just 1 year remaining and let her essentially be a free agent and put themselves in a spot where they would be in a bidding war against other athletic departments who might be able to pony up some more money. So I mean, and this isn't us like reporting any breaking news, but I just know that there are times where, you know, publicly it might be known like, oh, there's such and such years left on this person's deal. But like in reality, more often than not, those extensions are signed before they're made public months in advance. So Carter, I mean, maybe you have something I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any other info on this?
I mean, from what I understand, Heather Lyke makes $800,000, which is a pretty good rate for athletic directors. I think the most made is like Vanderbilt, who's like far above, but like most other, like the next closest, I think like Vanderbilt like makes like 4 million or something. But Vanderbilt's also like crazy because they're a private institution and they have other things going on and there's other responsibilities there. But from what I understand, I think the next highest is like 1.4 million dollars. So I'd imagine Pitt is going to be like, hey, we'll give you a raise. I mean, you know, this is a university that's been making progress. They'll be happy to pay whatever difference that is, make her one of the most highest paid ADs in the country, where she's at a very competitive rate. So it's not like she's getting shortchanged here. But yeah, I think I think what we're going to find out is in a few months' time, you know, after, or even maybe a month's time, like after the Pitt spring game, when things have calmed down and it's like in between Pitt football training camp starting back up. I think you'll see the university announce something and then something like that will happen. I don't anticipate them letting her go or close to letting her go. This is too much success right now for Pitt athletics, not just football, not just basketball, not just volleyball, not just soccer. And you get my point by saying not just 4 times there, and not just a national champion in wrestling. What Heather Lyke has been doing has been very good. And right now they're in the midst of finding a new gymnastics coach. They're finishing up the women's basketball coach hiring. She's been doing so much good. I don't think there's any way the university is just going to let her walk away unless someone comes and offers her a ridiculously high number, which, you know, I'm not, I mean, maybe someone would, but I think that Pitt's going to be able to hang on to her.
Right. I don't think they're going to let it get to that. And just looking at, I can't think, and you know, I'm not familiar with the entire University of Pittsburgh,
right,
on an academics and all of that research and all that, but it's hard to imagine there being many more valuable people to that university right now than Heather Lyke. If you just really break it down. I mean, this was a quote I got today from their new chancellor, Joan Gable. She said, you know, when asked about the importance of athletics, in her opinion, for a university, the first sentence in this quote, I think that intercollegiate athletics is the front porch of a university. It's how, for many people, their first way they engage with the university. So just with that mentality, and, you know, that could be just a bland quote or whatever, but the fact that she views college sports that way would indicate that, you know, Heather Lyke's new boss is going to recognize how valuable Heather Lyke is. I don't see Heather Lyke going anywhere because Pitt doesn't want her to leave. We'll move forward now. Tom wants to know, which would have been a better way to end Pitt's season? The way it was, which was a trip to Dayton and then a win over Iowa State in the first round of the NCAA tournament and then a loss to Xavier in the second round. Or if Blake Hinson made that 3 to beat Miami, then Pitt ties for the ACC regular season title, gets a double bye, wins one ACC tournament game, gets an 8-10 seed, but loses its first game in the NCAA tournament. So which way is better? Basically, what Tom's asking is, what would have been better? A banner that says NCAA tournament for Pitt, or a banner that says NCAA tournament and regular season ACC co-champion, but they didn't win a game in the tournament? What do you think, Carter?
That's interesting. So wait. The scenario here is
Pitt wins the ACC but loses in the first round of
so they don't get
March
the first
Madness.
round. Nah, I think I'd take what they got. The ACC banner would be cool, but that Mississippi State win, I think, was huge for a lot of things. I mean, you saw the emotion coming out of those guys. You saw the scene that it put on, what it meant for the Guillermo and Jorge, the Diaz-Graham twins. And then for them to get another win over Iowa State, I think those were two really good wins for the program in the tournament. Them getting to the round of 32. I think, yeah, it would be nice to hang an ACC championship banner, but I think that this season it would have been muddy a bit if they had just won one ACC tournament game. It also would have been interesting because they would not have had to play Duke where they played.
They would have played them in the semifinal.
Exactly.
The next round, they would have got smoked.
Right, they still would have gotten smoked,
Yeah.
But you're talking, winning a game and getting further in the ACC tournament, and maybe their seeding's a little bit better, and who knows where that goes. I'm one of those people that it's fun to play the what if game, but when something ends up with a good result, and this season was a good result, I feel like it's one thing, like, you don't want to touch any of that. Just like if you get the multiverse pill and you get to go back in time and you get to just let it be, because I think you got a lot of great stories out of this, a lot of great growth out of this. I think that this is, sure, been great if Blake had hit that 3-pointer. It'd been great if they could have won the ACC title, but I think all these other things, Jamarius's shot, in Dayton, and then Guillermo getting that block in Dayton, and then them just crushing Iowa State in the first in the round of 64. Just all of that, I think, was a whole lot of value that they're going to be able to ride on.
Yeah, I mean, the ACC banner would look nice, no doubt about it. And being able to recruit and say we went from 14th to first place in the league would mean something. But in reality, I just look at like momentum going into an offseason, and Pitt gets a lot more momentum into this offseason by the route that its season ended compared to this other scenario where, if you look, yeah, Henson makes that shot. But that means in this scenario, he said they would lose, they'd win one game in the ACC tournament and then lose to Duke. So you have a disappointing exit, really, after beating what would be Wake Forest probably in that quarterfinal game. You go to the semis, you get smoked by Duke, so that's disappointing. And then you go one and done in March Madness, and it kind of, you kind of see that hype get killed.
Yeah.
Like we saw it happen really the week prior to Greensboro in the ACC tournament, and also just that deflating loss to Duke. And on vice versa, where Pitt went through that downfall there in early March, but they climbed out of it with, like you said, Chris, with the win over Mississippi State and the win over Iowa. There was a good week in the chunk of, March where Pitt was a big talk. It was the talk of the town. And I think that meant more to the program than, a shared ACC title, but kind of fading into the nothingness of college basketball talk after winning that game in Miami that they didn't win.
I think also what could have been painted was, the narrative we saw all season. The ACC is not that good. The ACC is not that good.
Right.
If they would have won it, and then they would have said, see, as soon as they got to the tournament, they were ousted by, another middling team in other major conferences. They went and they beat one of the middle teams of the Big 12. Then they went and beat one of the middle teams, or the SEC, and then the Big 12. And they looked good they didn't look good. I mean, it was a smooth game, but they were able to play and look like a solid team that knew how to win, grinded out games. And I think that those wins are very important. And I think now, like, it kind of also fought against the narrative. Maybe the ACC was a little bit better than we gave it credit for all season long. So ultimately, like you said, I feel like the way this worked out was as good as you could have imagined at the start of the season, better than you could have imagined at the start of the season. And if you're to compare those two, I'd still take this option.
Yeah, I mean, those wins, especially the Dayton win over Mississippi State, that's one of the best. Like I said on the mailbag a couple weeks ago, that was their Johnny Cueto game, where it's definitely not the most important as far as like a championship or anything, but that meant a lot. And to win multiple games in the tournament, even if one of them was in Dayton in a play-in round, that's those tournament wins, they mean something for a program. And I think that's probably just as equal to, and then just the idea that they didn't get upset by anyone. They lost to a team that was clearly better than they were in Xavier. So yeah, we can move forward now. Alex wants to know, does Jaland Lowe have the best chance of this incoming freshman class to start for Pitt? Carter, you want to answer that?
That's an interesting point there, because that's an interesting question there, because I think Jaland Lowe, you're seeing him thrive right now. He got another award in Houston. He's been doing awesome there. But I look at his size. He's 6'1", 160. It might take him a little bit longer to adjust to the college game, whereas Carrington, he's 6'4", 175. He built like he got the length to compete, and who knows? It just, as they say, if you got that dog in you, then it's something else. And I will say that both of those kids got dogs in them, and then Marlon Barnes also could be interesting at 6'6", and where he'd fit on the team there. But I think Jaland Lowe, he'll come off the bench. I think he'll provide some really good minutes for Pitt next year. But if I was to pick, and I think he could eventually end up starting, but I think Carrington, with his size, I think he just gets a little bit more of a chance to play early on next season for Pitt. But both will become instrumental parts of that team.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a couple of factors. One, obviously, what Pitt does in the transfer portal. I mean, if they land Joe Girard, then no, they're not starting. Neither of them are. I'd be shocked and then the other factor is, does Dior Johnson completely return? I mean, we've heard nothing to indicate that he wouldn't be returning. But if Dior Johnson doesn't come back, then yeah, one of those two, Carrington or Lowe, and I'd probably say it would be Lowe, because the way they kind of match up is Lowe is more of a Nelly Cummings type player, and Carrington is more of a Jamarius Burton type player with his size, or even maybe like a Nike Savandi type player. So I think that just because of the way those games can be correlated, Pitt has a point guard in Dior Johnson. And I think that maybe with Carrington's size, he would get the edge as far as a starting spot. But again, it depends on what these guys do in the transfer portal. There's a chance that I could see them bringing in two starters through the portal next year. And you add Dior, Fetty, and Blake to that, and that's your starting five. And then you have two 4-star guards and the Diaz-Graham twins coming off the bench for you. That's a pretty solid 9-man group right there, plus Barnes, who could be your 10th man. So that's a really deep roster. We'll see. I think it's still a little early to tell either way. Best of Pitt wants to know, on the note of freshman talk, who are some freshmen that you see getting the most playing time this year in football? And that's a good question. So obviously, half the freshman class of 2022 isn't even on Pitt's campus yet.
Yeah.
But there have been guys we've seen in spring ball. Carter, do you want to go first, or shall I? I had a sticky note with names picked out for this, but I lost it. So I'll defer to you first, because I actually had notes for this.
Okay. So I think one person that we're hearing a lot of really good things about is Isaiah Neal, the kid they call Ghost. And he, in a lot of ways, he was kind of like the big name of this group, even though Jordan Bass was the 4-star guy of this group. But they gave this kid Aaron Donald's number.
Yeah.
You don't just do that if you're Pitt. I don't know if anyone else has worn 97. I can't think of anyone who has since he's been with the program.
Kickers.
Kickers. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
But like defensive linemen.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
And now I will say this, we brought it up, and I think it was Devin Danielson when we mentioned, he's like, he is wearing Aaron's number. Now that we do know that, we are going to give him some problems for that. So it seemed like the players hadn't really jumped all over him because of it, but that shows me that there's a bit of confidence in him being there. I've also heard really good things about Braylan Lovelace and what he's been able to bring. None of these guys I don't think are become starters. Pitt's too deep. This is a program right now that's been building up and sustaining guys, and guys have been having to work their way up. But I think all these guys, there's certain guys here like Lovelace, like Neal, maybe Bass, all these guys, I think they kind of work their way into the depth as options that come up the board and eventually like fill in during key games. Maybe TJ Harbison finds a way to crack into some running back snaps, if there's some injuries and things like that. So certainly options there. But like we heard a lot about like Ryan Gandy, who was he was a cornerback that was making waves last year in spring practice and in summer practice, and he was all over the place, and he didn't see the field. It's too jacked. I mean, Bengali Kamara who everyone's excited about this year. He's been waiting 3 years for this opportunity. So like this is a good thing for Pitt that these kids take time, but I would just maybe give like 2 guys a nod this year.
Yeah, I mean, Neal, I think, is going to end up being the star of this class, just based off of what I've seen from him in spring ball and the fact that he's a 4-star. But other guys, you mentioned Lovelace. I wouldn't be shocked to see Lovelace get reps on special teams.
Yeah.
Just because of the way Pat Narduzzi's talked about him this spring. He always brings him up. And now he didn't have like the best reviews from their first scrimmage. I'm interested to see how he did in their second scrimmage, which we'll find out Tuesday afternoon after practice. But other guys that I have my eye on are a pair of receivers, Lamar Seymour and Israel Polk are 2 early enrollee receivers. And I just look at that spot on the depth chart where, you have your 3 starters, but they need rotation guys. And Miles Alston is going to be one of them. But who's behind Miles Alston? And Pitt, before guys started transferring out or just annoyed the coaching staff to the point where they weren't going to get playing time, Pitt does rotate, 4 or 5 guys at those position groups. So I think one of those early enrollees might end up finding a spot on the field on, 3rd and longs where they need to go 4 wide. Or if it's a long drive where they're running the ball, they might just say, hey, freshmen, get out there and take a series as the X and just, they're probably not going to throw the ball to you, but whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw number 83 or number 27 out there on the field on offense sometime this fall. That's Seymour and Polk. And I think that's the benefit of being an early enrollee guy at a position group that is thin, really the only position group that's thin on Pitt's entire roster is receivers. So those are 2 guys that I would look out for. Everywhere else, it's just so deep. And if you're seeing a freshman play there with the ones, something went pretty wrong. So we'll finish off here, but with Roy, do the Diaz-Graham twins have any NIL deals? They seem like naturals, and I would hate to see them lured elsewhere. Well, Roy, fear not, because international players cannot receive NIL endorsements. So Pitt will not have a problem as far as NIL competition to keep these guys around. But, Carter, just looking at this program and where it could be going, do you think that keeping young superstars happy with NIL deals is something that Pitt needs to worry about moving forward?
I think that Pitt needs to, remain competitive, or be competitive with NIL deals. They should try to make sure that they're a thing. But I think one thing Pitt's done a good job of so far is they haven't been, they've gotten people to buy into the Pitt image. You talk about the volleyball, team when, they could have had team players that left. You look at this basketball team where, I think guys bought in. You saw guys talk about love for each other and if can that be sustained over multiple years or if that was just this group. But I think look at football. I mean, there were all sorts of rumors that that Brandon Hill, Kalijah Cansey, Eric Hallett, there were guys who could have been stolen away. Marquez Williams was another one. There were teams that were rumored to be coming to Collin for some of these top Pitt football guys, and they stuck around because they wanted to be with this positive environment that Pitt football had. Then you hear about the positive environment that basketball has, that volleyball has, and that all these other teams are putting together. I don't think that's the only thing that keeps kids around, but when it comes to, college athletes, they do want to, be appreciated for it. But I also think that, unless someone comes with a Jordan Addison type bag where it was rumored to be like $4 million, I don't think they're going to be leaving, because I also don't think that, people are going to be comping up too much kind of big money. Now, it could be interesting for, like, let's say next year, Dior Johnson or Carl Carrington or Jaland Lowe, one of those kids pops off and is like all ACC freshman, like Kyle Filipowski for Pitt, but as a guard. And then all of a sudden someone says, oh, no, come over here to this big name. Like Kansas comes to Collin, Kentucky comes to Collin, one of those type of things. And then, they might lose out on those types of guys. But I think on the majority of their guys, like the Diaz-Graham twins, I think they're going to be fine. Do get them NIL deals, but I don't think they're going to be rushing out of here.
Well, and again, you cannot get the Diaz-Graham twins NIL deals. They are international athletes. They cannot make money internationally. But I think another thing to remember for Pitt fans is this happened one time to a Pitt athlete.
Yeah.
And it happened to the best receiver in the country. Yep. So that's not necessarily a bad problem to have. I mean, obviously, if you have a top player in the country, you want to be able to keep said player. But there's a big difference in prowess between what Jordan Addison was to Pitt football and to what Jorge and Guillermo Diaz-Graham are to basketball. Mm-hmm. So it's just Pitt doesn't have, and Pitt has a lot of good players, but Pitt's success in football and basketball has been due largely in part to, a collective effort. Now, you could point out that Addison and Pickett in 2021 were anomalies to that, but it's the greater whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. And so there aren't many guys right now who would be in that Jordan Addison, oh my God, we got to worry about keeping him here type territory that they could go pick away. Because again, I mean, Blake Hinson is probably like the top guy for basketball. And I like Blake, and Blake's a really good player, but you can go find people who had just as much success at the collegiate level as Blake in the transfer portal right now. Then you don't need to go pluck him from a roster. So, and then same could be said for football, where Pitt has a lot of talented football players on this upcoming roster, but no one to the caliber of Addison, where it's like, we cannot find someone better than him. We've got to go get him. And that could happen in the future, like you mentioned, Carter, with Dior Johnson, with Carrington, with Lowe, all these guys. But no one is remotely close to being in that, risk of being lost just yet. So that's something that Pitt needs to worry about for sure, in the sense where they don't want that to be a reoccurring thing anytime they do get a generational type talent. But for the most part, Pitt doesn't have 5 stars coming in and if guys are going to become All-Americans here at Pitt, it's going to happen over a steady buildup to where when that All-American season happens, they're going pro the following year. There's no one to lose them to aside from one of the 32 NFL teams or one of the 30 NBA teams. So that's kind of where that stands, in my opinion. Carter, any final thoughts as we wrap up the show?
I think with everything we look at with some of the things that are going on and changing here, Pitt basketball is looking to add guys, but Pitt spring football, I think, has been, some good signs as far as things how things are going, especially for the new offense. I'm intrigued when we get to watch some of these new quarterbacks and new receivers. I think that there's some skepticism after Keaton Slovis came in last year and, didn't exactly light it up for the Panthers. But I think there's a different kind of optimism for both Jurkovec and Veyer, as quarterbacks here, and the things that they'll be able to bring to the quarterback position, as well as the receiving group. Dejon Reynolds is gonna be in there. Bub Means seems to be playing a little bit better than he was this time last year. Well, he wasn't with the team this time last year, but in the summer it took him some time to adjust. I think there's some really good things on the upswing in here. So stay tuned for what's coming with Pitt spring football. Stay tuned for the transfer moves as far as Pitt basketball. A lot of still good news in what could, is the off season for both of the university's major programs and how things are moving forward. Also, Pitt volleyball had a big win in a scrimmage over Ohio State over the weekend. It was a really impressive showing on their part. So they're getting their spring off season officers to a big start.
There you go with the volleyball scoops again. Chris Carter volleyball, baby. Keep it tuned in. We'll have all of your Pitt coverage, from the spring ball to basketball, transfer portal stuff, to the spring sports, which we'll start having stories on here soon, and everything else. Keep those questions coming in, and keep tuning in to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel, where Chris Carter will have you covered on North Shore Drive Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and myself, Adam Bittner, and others will fill in the cracks from there. We love you for tuning in, and we'll keep the content coming. See you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.